Hi everyone, Peter here from Flow High Performance, and in this video we will cover how to program isometric strength training to enhance sprint performance. Before we explore how isometric strength training can be programmed, we first need to understand what benefits isometric strength training has for sprint performance. To understand this, we need to look at an athlete sprinting at max velocity. As we can see from this study, during max velocity sprinting, the foot is only in contact with the ground for around 0.1 seconds. Therefore, it is not enough time for the athlete to flex and extend the joints much to produce force with typical concentric and eccentric muscle actions. Instead, we see minimal movement from the knee and ankle joints, meaning that the surrounding muscles act isometrically, while the tendons undergo a fast stretch and recoil. So if an athlete can increase the isometric strength of the quads and calf muscles, then they can hold a more rigid position during ground contact. This study showed that ground reaction forces can be up to 5 times the athlete's body weight during max velocity sprinting. Therefore, athletes must be able to resist knee and ankle movement against extremely high forces with each stride. Now that we understand the relevance of isometric strength training for sprint performance, let's now explore what isometric exercises we can implement to enhance sprint performance. Essentially, we want to target the ankle and knee joints primarily, as these joints are required to maintain a rigid structure during ground contact. We also want to use sprint-specific joint angles for maximum transfer to sprint performance. For the ankle joint, we want to use isometric training with slight plantar flexion, as this is the position the ankle is in during ground contact at max velocity. For the knee joint, we want to perform our isometric exercises at near full extension, as this replicates the knee position at ground contact. There are many ways to perform isometric strength training, although I think the easiest way is to set up an empty barbell in a squat rack with the pins on top of the bar. So when the athlete pushes up, the pins stop the barbell from moving upward. The athlete can then set the pins to a height that puts them in a correct joint position. For ankle isometrics, the athlete can place the ball of the foot on a plate to raise the heel off the ground. And for the knee isometric, the athlete can place the whole foot on the ground and push with a near full extended knee joint. And now we can explore how isometric strength training can be programmed for maximum transfer to sprint performance. Essentially, we have 3 different ways isometrics can be programmed depending on the time of the year. In the early preparation period, or when the athlete is further from their peak, longer duration isometrics should be used. These isometrics will result in lower average forces, but must be held for longer durations. The athlete should push with at least 90% effort and maintain this output for the entire duration of the exercise. Durations of around 6 to 12 seconds are a good range to program for this period of time. For example, an athlete may perform 1 exercise for the ankle and 1 exercise for the knee. In this example, we have the athlete perform 3 sets of 10-second holds with 90 to 95% intent for each leg. They can then perform this each week for that particular mesocycle and should see improvements in average force output over time if it was measured with a force platform. Later in the preparation cycle, shorter duration isometric strength training can be implemented to focus on maximal force output. Here the athlete is aiming for absolute maximal output with each effort. Durations of around 3 to 5 seconds are best for this type of training with 100% intent. For example, we may have the same setup as the last mesocycle, although this time the duration and effort have changed. Here we have durations of 4 seconds and an intent of 100%. This can be performed over the mesocycle, and we should see an increase in maximal force output over time. And when an athlete aims to be in peak condition, we can perform isometric holds with switches. This is when the athlete switches between limbs during each hold. This requires the athlete to develop pre-tension in the muscles before contact with the ground. With the switching variations, athletes will reach peak force in shorter time frames, meaning that the rate of force development is greater. For example, we may have the same exercise prescription as the previous 2 mesocycles, although this time we have programmed it slightly differently. Here the athlete performs 3 sets with 3 switches for each limb, and each rep is held for 3 seconds. So the athlete will get into the isometric position and then switch between limbs 3 times each side and hold each one for 3 seconds. The athlete should attempt to apply maximal force with each hold. Thanks for watching, and hopefully you got something out of this video. Remember to subscribe if you haven't already.